You have 6 minutes.
Thanks, Chairman. I want to welcome the Minister to the House again, and I want to praise the Minister for all the work she's trying to do with regard to homelessness, and from my part I will do my best to help her along if there's anything I can do to do that. I've always said in relation to homelessness that it is a crime that it's allowed to happen, but I think it's even a bigger crime not to deal with the causes of homelessness. And there are many causes. But before I just go into that, I just want to compliment, first of all, the Simon community. And I know the great work that the Simon community in Athlone do, and Midlands Simon. And I think it's important, Minister, that their budgets are protected. Certainly because they deserve protecting, and particularly at a time when charitable organisations are getting a battering out there, and they're all being painted with one brush, and some unfairly so, and I think that we should be mindful of that. Could I also just say that I find it laughable to listen to Senator O'Donnell. He reminds me a bit of an assassin. He comes and he fires a Scud missile and he runs out the door then as fast as he can. And while he's here, he throws around figures like 98,000 and 198,000. He's not here. It appeared to me when he started talking that he was passionate about homelessness and housing, but he just said his piece and he's gone. So unfortunately he's gone, because I wanted to just tell him about what the reality on the ground is. It might be 98,000 on paper that are on county council housing lists or whatever. I never believed that the number of people that's on a county council housing list, local authority housing list, are actually the reality of the number of people that are looking for local authority housing, because the majority of them are forced onto a council list so that they can qualify for rent allowance, and lots of them don't want local authority housing. And I think it's a wrong guide to use. And Minister, you were getting bashed as a result of it because of this guide that was put in by the previous government that we should do this. But the reality is different. I spoke to a housing officer in my own county council there 2 weeks ago about a particular house that I was trying to get for a family. And she said, John, we wrote 23 families for this house, and only two of them had any interest in taking the house. That means that 9% or less of the people on local authority houses, if that was to be replicated across the country, only 9% of them are really looking for local authority housing. Now, I know it might be slightly different in Dublin to the greater rural Ireland area, but it is a significant fact that should be taken into consideration. Could I also say that I've met with homeless people since I came to Dublin, because they're all over the place. You see them in doorways, and some of them are begging for money, and I feel sorry for them, and you talk to them. And I know from talking to a number of them, something that I would consider, and it was touched on, I think, by Senator Hayden and again by Senator Andy, the fact that if they get a rent deposit from the community welfare officer, and if for some reason or another there's a marriage breakup, or there's violence in the home, or there's a drug issue that they couldn't handle at the time and they've since dealt with it and they're back on track again, but if they go back in to look for another deposit, they refused it. It's just a blanket refusal. Now, I think, Minister, that's something that should be looked at, and discretion should be given to the community welfare officer to allow somebody to have a deposit so that they can secure a house. When they can secure a house, they have an address, they can then get social welfare, and they're able to apply for rent allowance, and maybe everything will be, okay into the future. But it's something that needs to be addressed, and not just a blanket. No. The other thing, in relation to homelessness, certainly it's a big issue in Dublin, but it could very well become a big issue in rural Ireland because of the way the banks are threatening to evict people from their family homes. And I know from talking to very qualified insolvency practitioners that unless you have money, the insolvency legislation isn't there to help you. So it's another issue, Minister, that needs to be addressed. I know I'm running a seminar next Monday night in my own county, ran by an insolvency practitioner, to inform people as to what service is actually there for them, which at the moment doesn't appear to be there for everybody. It's there for rich people and it's not there for poor people. Another issue I think some senator mentioned, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but it touched on it. And again, I've come across cases of it. Under the legislation now to qualify for county council housing, where there's a case of a breakup of a marriage, there is a house. One of the couple gets the house. We'll say it's the man. He gets the house. The wife and the kids move out of the house. The wife might agree to the husband staying in the house because he knows, or she knows, that down the road that house is going to be there for her kids. But yet, the legislation is forcing people to resolve the housing issue, which means they have to go to court, spend all their money on barristers, fight over it, sell the house, split it, and the house is gone. That in itself causes some degree of homelessness, while in the meantime, the lady and her 2 kids cannot get on the county council housing list. And finally, another area that is going to be very topical, Minister, in the next week or two, and I think you need to deal with it with Minister Deanahan before it actually happens, and that is in relation to the bylaws that are planned to be introduced with regard to mooring costs. At present, people who are living on boats, on the canals and waterways, some 400 families in this country at the moment who are managing to pay or get away with paying something like €126 a year for a mooring, are now going to be faced with charges of €3,500 a year. Lots of them, Minister, are retired English couples and families that can't afford housing, and if this goes ahead, and it's still in the government's gift here to decide to reduce those charges from €3,500 down to something, that is acceptable by these people, well, if it's going to happen, Minister, you're going to have another 400 or more families on your books to look after. So, look, I support the government on this motion. I will continue to work with the Minister, and I will give as much help as I can to try and help her resolve all of these